Welcome to the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast. Tune in every Thursday as we share inspirational stories from the world's greatest creators, entrepreneurs, and go-getters about how they've turned life's lemons into lemonade. And now, here's this week's host, the CEO of Lemonade Stand, Derek Miner.
Welcome to the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast. I'm Derek, and I'm here with literally one of my favorite humans on the planet, Jeanette Bennett. You've probably seen her as a writer, as a media personality, as an MC, as a speaker, as a giver, one of the greatest people I know. And I'm so honored that you'd be here on
Derek,
our podcast.
You're so awesome. You always, whenever you see me, you're like, hey, cool person. So I'm going to say it back to you. Hey, cool person. Thanks for inviting me today.
Yeah, so glad to have you.
Thanks.
You have met so many incredible people throughout your experience.
I've been lucky.
What are some of the, it's probably unfair to say who, right?
Yeah.
But are some that just stand out? And what are some of the things that you've learned from them in interacting with them?
You know, that is a common question I get. Who's your favorite person? And it's like my mind starts spinning from 2000 to now, 24 years worth. And really, there's not many that I couldn't say that was my favorite, you know, because I learned from everybody, including like we do high schoolers who will change the world. So these are 17, 18-year-olds. Love meeting them. Up to Ruth Hale, who we got to feature on our cover before she passed away, the Hale Theater matriarch. So, I mean, everybody is really amazing. I would probably say whatever my last interview was my favorite, and Tom Holmoe was my most recent. So, who's the athletic director at BYU. We're going to name him our person of the year. And so that was awesome. I love it when I get 2 hours or something with someone. And sometimes the first 20 minutes is just light. And then you get to the good stuff. You get to the stories, you get to the feelings, you get to people connecting the dots to the things that have happened in their lives. And it's honestly an honor to sit there and help people see their stories and process their stories and see threads tying through that maybe they didn't even see before. But then when I hear it, I'm like, wow. So the same attribute that you had as a 15-year-old, you still have, or whatever that is, you know. So it's been an honor. It's been athletes, politicians. I've known the past few governors have been friends and on our covers and things, university presidents, and yeah, right on down to people that aren't household names, but and are nervous to meet the magazine lady or whatever. We just, calm them down. And I just love helping people see that their stories are really valuable.
I love that because everyone does have a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I know very few people that have had the opportunity to meet and interact with as many, right?
Mm-hmm.
From high schoolers all the way through to politicians. Are there common themes or threads that you see with people's life stories?
I would say everybody is kind of the same in some ways, whether you have $1 billion or you're making minimum wage. Everyone has dreams. Everyone has some insecurities. Everyone has some things that were maybe hard in their childhood from, whether that was just feeling insecure to being food insecure. There's things we carry with us and lessons that we learn. And I think everybody wants to be good. I think everybody's trying to figure out how to do that. Like how can I make an impact on the world? And so to hear people's different versions of that is pretty special. So that's been great. And I think everyone is wanting to connect with other people. And the people who have the richest, most blessed lives are those that have figured out how to make those connections and how to prioritize that.
Yeah.
Digitally, in real life, through philanthropy, through hugs, There's lots of ways to connect, but that's definitely something that I've noticed as well. And everyone really they have emotions. Sometimes people don't choose to share those, but if you spend enough time with someone, there are deep feelings about a number of topics. And that's when we really connect, honestly, is when you get down to that layer.
And what are some of those topics that you've been to that are just like, wow, this is...
Feelings about parents.
Yeah.
If parents have passed on, sometimes there's a lot of gratitude, but also like, I wish I would have said this or done this, or I regret this. I think wondering if people have those feelings of like, have I made the most of my life? Have I made the right choices career-wise or whatever? I think everyone has a little bit of imposter syndrome, as they climb through life. And I'm experiencing a little bit of a chapter of that myself of like, oh man, like, am I up for this life that I've created? And so to talk through that I think is interesting. Everyone loves to be reassured that they are doing great and they are great at their core, no matter who you are. we all seek that reassurance from above, from parents, from peers. It's valuable. So yeah, I think we're all more alike than we are different. And that's maybe not something that I would have supposed when I was 25 and started our magazine. I thought everyone would be vastly different, and they are in their experiences and what they hang on their wall and what they do at 6 a.m. But at the core, we're all having a human experience that involves family, that involves figuring out how to earn money, and then how to allocate money, and then how to allocate time. We're all going through a lot of those similar things. Yeah. So I love just talking with people about that. That's so cool. And asking that question, that hit directly, having just lost my dad, right? Mm-hmm. And what you think about are, what are the lessons that he taught? Mm-hmm. And am I passing on the things that I want? Because ultimately, as I think about this, the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast, life gives you lemons. It's hard. It's challenging. Right. And who's really going to be listening to this? Likely our kids and maybe their kids. Right. And so what would you hope that they would appreciate or understand from your experience thus far? Well, first of all, let me say your dad was a remarkable person. We wrote about his music a few different times, and he's a special man. So I'm sorry for your loss there. So what would I want my kids and grandkids to know about I have started sending family texts, and I'm sure sometimes I get eye rolls of like, there goes mom. She's got some ideas. But I do kind of feel like, I'm exposed to a lot of amazing people, amazing ideas. And if I don't share them with my kids and my employees, and it stops with me, that's not fair. Yeah. So I've been trying to send texts out, even though this week one of them was, make sure you're drinking plenty of water. I mean, just basic things. Yeah. But also another recent one that I told my kids is, so I've been on a couple of business trips lately where you're with this same group for a number of days, and sometimes there's downtime. You find yourself telling stories. And I found myself telling my kids, one of the skills in life and in business is to be able to tell your own stories. Be able to connect that way. So hone some of your stories that are funny from high school, or things that you learned, or things that you can share in a group that help you connect. Yeah. That's something that I didn't learn in business school, and probably didn't learn from my parents really, but I'm seeing that that's a skill that works in business and in life, to be able to take some space in the conversation and share a story that will make people smile or laugh or connect. I love that. And it's uniquely yours, right? There can't be any platform that could regenerate that for you, right? Or tell the story better than you from your own life experience. Yes. So a few years ago, I went through a cancer journey, and I wasn't on the brink of death, but it did make me visit my mortality. What if? So I wrote a really long letter that I only wanted them to open if I died in surgery or something happened. And so one of the things in there, it's still unopened, right? Because I'm alive. Yeah. But one of the things I wrote to him was, every city you go to, go for a walk. You can see things on a walk that you don't see in a bus or an Uber or a plane. You have to walk around to smell and to hear and to do all the things. I mean, silly stuff like that I'm I want my kids I want them to know the things that I valued and the things that helped me expand my mind and my career, my connections. Yeah. I think naturally I would keep those things in, kind of be oh, they probably don't care what I think, but then I'm I actually want them to know this stuff, you know? Right. So, I mean, it's simple things like that. Go for a walk in a city. I love that. And you think about how connected we are. We talked about connection. If we don't have an internet connection for less than a half a second, we're already frustrated. Oh yeah. We're dying. And our heads are down. But the second you just can take a step back and look out and look around, all of a sudden you start to see things and appreciate things in a different way, in a different light. Wouldn't the New York subway be a much more interesting place if nobody had phones? So and we actually had to look at each other and make conversation. Yeah. It would be so much more interesting. It's so interesting. You talk about smells. There are smells in different places where you go that are just unique to that, and experiences that you can have, like the pizza or the churros or the roasted nuts, things like that are so unique, and other smells to New York. Right? Exactly. Yeah, when I think of New York, I don't think of those really good smells. Right. But it is a good smell in a way because there's memories attached to it. Yeah, that's right. So as you think about some of the challenges, in business and life, you've been dealt some lemons. And how have you turned those experiences into lemonade? I think the very first lemon was that when I was 25 and starting the magazine, I knew nothing. I had no money. I had no network. I had no connections, really. I mean, very limited. And I think at times I looked around at other entrepreneurs and I was like, well, they have money and their parents helped them and they know what they're doing. And that was kind of a victim mentality that I had to overcome pretty quick and just be like, you know what? It's actually, and I can see this now. In college, I didn't have financial support from my parents. So I always had a job. Well, every job I got was related to journalism. And so when I graduated, I had multiple job offers because of that lemon turned into me having a pretty decent resume by the time I graduated. And other roommates that had been financially supported and hadn't had jobs were graduating when they hadn't had a work experience yet. So that was like my first experience of seeing actually lemons can be our greatest strength, And then when I started my business, I had some of those same thoughts of like, wow, I don't have a lot of support here. I don't even know what I'm doing. But then that made me humble enough to ask. And a lot of times when I interview different entrepreneurs, of course I'm interviewing them for the story, but I'm also really curious. Like, how do I do this? How do I hire someone? How do I pay taxes? How do I, what are the things that I need to learn? And so that lemon of not knowing anything gave a lot of fruits. And I still feel that way. I still feel like kind of this quiet little girl from Idaho who's just kind of making things work in the world. And so I feel like I have a lot to learn from other people. So that's been great. And then in 2020, I had the cancer journey that I mentioned earlier. So it was the year of 2020, of course, it was pandemic and
Right.
Our magazine, we were not publishing anything. So business was struggling. We moved right then, which was exciting, but also like I moved away from my known network of people. So we're in a new place, people we hadn't met yet. And then I had this cancer journey that year and it reframed everything for me. And it felt a little bit like, wow, quite a year,
Yeah.
like COVID, cancer, and it was scary. And then a secondary type of cancer that is, it's good. It's good right now. So, but it was a lot to take in. So
Yeah.
what were the lemons? Well, I got completely immersed on health and wellness, all types. I became more aware of the body, spirit, mind connection. My body had always just done everything I needed to do. I could give it 2 hours of sleep. I could give it 7 hours of sleep. I could do whatever I needed to do. Ran some half marathons, just super healthy, 5 pretty easy pregnancies, like pretty good life.
Yeah.
And I had taken that all really for granted. And so it helped me just really establish that. I went to therapy for the first time. Like, what are some ways I could be more mentally and emotionally healthy? I started really looking at my diet, talking to a lot of new people, meeting a lot of new people who were on that journey, either in the cancer journey or the wellness journey. It really opened me up to this club of people that I never wanted to join. But once you've had a cancer diagnosis, there's just this connection. There's this world. There's this understanding. And because I chose to be pretty open about my journey, I had many people reach out with a recent diagnosis, questions. And that, in fact, I had one of my assistants help me create these little gift bags of diagnoses. Like,
Wow.
I'm sorry about that. And here, some comfort things and some things I've learned and all that. And that helped me just connect with a new group of people. Last night I had someone reach out who thinks they might have some thyroid cancer, and that's the type that I went through. And so I was again telling her, here's some experts, read this study, start here, here's how they're going to diagnose it, the things that I would have really appreciated at that point in my journey. So that's a huge lemonade story for me.
Yeah.
New connections, new people. And I think my gratitude and love for life, which I don't think was like at zero before, but it really grew from there.
Yeah.
And I started feeling like, well, I'm going to live every day I'm alive. So yeah, let's just go for this.
Yeah.
I mean, it really doesn't matter if all the shoes in the mudroom are lined up. It does not. These silly little things, I don't really want to waste time on that.
Yeah.
I want to make the most of it. I want to make the most of my life. So at the end, I feel like I did the most with what I had. I tried to create more, and I'm not talking financially, more abundance, more love, more connection, more dreams, more belief, more support for people that I knew. you know? And so that actually, other than like some of the ongoing physical challenges, like it really is a blessing, you know? Yeah, it really is.
That's incredible.
It's been a blessing for my soul, for sure.
Absolutely. And I think about, we were even talking before we started about some of the greatest people that you know, right? And your opportunity to really empathize and understand, but those who give, because maybe they've been there and they give and yet they have more. Who have you seen and what have you seen that's inspired you through that process?
So one of the stories that I read early on that I loved was John Huntsman Sr., when he was in college and didn't have money, was slipping $50 to the single mom or the widow down the street or something, unbeknownst to his wife at first. And then the abundance came and continued to come, and he, you know, grew the Huntsman Cancer Center, which is where I got my treatment. So I have this love and connection to what he created. Right. And then I've gotten to know some of his children. John Huntsman Jr. was the governor. I worked with him on a number of things and have interviewed him. And then his daughter, Christina, I recently wrote a story on her. And before he passed away, he said to his kids, find your cancer, meaning find your passion that you're going to really get behind. And she and her siblings have chosen mental health. So I was interviewing Christina Huntsman Durham about that. And I just think the more she gives, the more she gets, you know. And then I look at the unique company with Derek and Shalane Maxfield and how they wanted to help solve, I don't know if you can solve it, but help assist and bless those people who have experienced sexual abuse as a child. Now they're adults. And he started a company with its main goal of funding this. And in fact, he said in one of our interviews, he said, God wanted this foundation to exist, so he's blessing my company. And he said, and you can print that. And I did. I printed it exactly like that. Because a lot of people will say a lot of religious things and then be like, maybe don't put that in. Just because, you know, for a few reasons. Maybe it's too personal, or maybe they don't want to sound preachy or something like that. Yeah. But as much as possible, I like to show people as a whole human. And the spiritual component is quite large. It's a big part of all of us, however we choose to define that. So anyway, I think the Maxfields have lived that principle of karma where they give, their business succeeds, they're blessed, they give more. So many of the families that I've seen and companies that I've seen, it's like a real principle. Yeah. You know, it's so cool to see that that's actually a business strategy. Right. And a human strategy and a family strategy. Exactly. Right. To be able to see that what you've been blessed with isn't just yours, you know, it's to bless others. And then you get blessings back in ways seen and unseen. That's a pretty cool thing to watch happen over and over again in other people's lives and in your own. Yeah, no doubt. That's one of the things that I get to see firsthand here at so many team members that we work with. That's so cool. Outside of themselves, seeing how can I help someone? Someone didn't show up for a meeting. Oh, we found out they were sick. They send them something. And even, I love that. I think this is one of the most interesting things too, is the more you tend to give, the more it seems that you have. Yet, and the more we try to hold on to things, it seems like the less we have, right? I think one of the greatest dichotomies in kind of this context and where we go. But that's so inspiring. Yeah. Thanks for sharing those stories. Yeah. And you know, another application to that, I have found that with ideas too. So sometimes I think in business or even like in church callings or something, like we have this really creative idea and we're like, I don't want to share this. Like I need the credit for this. Right. But then if you mentor, if you bless, you know, or if I gave my whole girls camp scenario or my trek scenario to someone else, and there's that moment of like, oh, okay. You know, like this actually did happen to me. I planned this trek and there was kind of component where we rebuilt the Nauvoo temple in an afternoon anyway. Wow. And then another stake asked if they could have our stuff like a few weeks later and rebuild it. And so we did. And that got written in the church news, like their stakes thing. And I had this moment of like, well, that was interesting. Yeah. But then I'm like, but how cool, you know, that the ideas I feel like I was blessed with, bless someone else. And I do feel like God, when he sees that we're generous, he'll give us more. So I have this philosophy that I try to remind myself of, like, if I share, more ideas will come, more opportunities will come. You know, if I can't publish this magazine or if I can't speak at that event, but I give it to my competitor or someone else, but like bless someone else, then that's not a loss. That's a gain.
Absolutely.
To help everybody around as much as possible.
I love that. And to think you creating an environment or being a part of an environment where you feel, number one, safe to share an idea, because I believe everyone has an idea, right? And perhaps it's fear, perhaps it's being unsure, right? That you can share something like that, whether in any type of context, but you think about, let's talk about that. And what does that look like? And even the fact that you could be heard and something even happens as a result of that, able to look back, whether it's in any aspect. I love that idea that you talked about the whole body experience, right? Body, mind, soul, all these things being connected. And I think about that too within a business context, right? Corporation, corp is body, right? Or corporal.
Good point.
And if you have a company, and I think we're really good on the outside, right? But how do you, every company has a soul, right? And how can you really help that shine,
right?
And make the most out of it?
And how do you fuel the body? And how do you let the body rest?
Right.
All of those things.
Exactly.
Your corporate body.
Yeah. And culture is a hot topic right now, really hot, especially as people are, with what happened, we talked about with the pandemic, right? And challenges of people working remote, and now people being required to come into an office. And you've interviewed some incredible companies, entrepreneurs, team members. As you think about culture, how would you describe a winning culture?
Wow, that is a good question. It does come up. And there's not consensus exactly on how many hours you should be in the office and how much autonomy and all of this. I will say the cultures that I think are built for longevity involve a lot of autonomy, a lot of support, and a lot of connection to the human, to the soul. This isn't just a robot working here. This is a person with a family and with a soul and with some challenges, and when cultures that recognize that. I think especially for women, the flexibility, it's really for everyone, right? But it's I think women that have really needed it the most, mothers, I should say, that have just wanted to be home with a baby or wanted to have some flexibility. I'm talking about my own life here, and I think a culture that celebrates that instead of punishes that or sees that as a weakness is a good one. We've written a lot about companies that have been best company to work for because they have basketball courts and ping pong tables and they have really cool Christmas parties, and that is cool. But that's not culture. The end, period. That is a piece of it. And so smaller companies, and mine's a small company, and other small companies I've written about, that culture isn't defined by those big things. It's defined by what is the mood in the office? What is there? What's going up and down the halls? Is it a feeling of fear or is it a feeling of praise? Is it a feeling of collaboration? Is it a feeling of I'm keeping these ideas to myself because they'll take credit for it kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Culture is really what the feeling that is in that conference room when you sit down for a staff meeting. Yeah. And awesome. That's really what it comes down to. And other things add up to it, whatever bonuses you give or all of that is part of it. But at the end of the day, I think people want to feel safe. And you were kind of talking about that just a second ago. They want to feel safe to say the things that they're thinking about a project, an idea, but also about their own life,
Yeah. That's so true. And you have a remarkable team too.
I do.
Many who I know personally and have known for a long time.
Yeah.
But how have you, as you've continued, to grow and evolve with the times and technology, keeping such a tight-knit team and the ability in a space to share ideas and get their perspective to help you conquer next year?
Yeah, I will say that, so a lot of my team members have been with me a long time, like over 20 years, and then others over 15 years. I mean, we're a small team, but a lot of us have been there a long time. When the pandemic hit and we went fully remote, and then we went hybrid, and that's still where we are today, is a really open schedule.
Yeah.
It worked really well for those of us who had worked together a long time because the job descriptions were really clear. And the routines and the camaraderie, it all remained. It was more difficult for new team members to fully understand the processes and the job descriptions, and a lot of that was my own fault of not being able to explain that, because other people who had joined the team, they can just observe it by watching and walking up down the hall and overhearing conversations. But if you're remote, it's harder to pick up on those things. That took a little more intentionality. So I would say now I would say the morale, and I maybe shouldn't speak for my team, but I think I can. Morale is higher than ever, and freedom is higher than ever. And yesterday we had our Christmas party. We did something really low key. No spouses or families even. We all just went to lunch because I didn't want anyone to have to work hard on a party. We've worked hard all year.
Yeah, that's right.
So we are not, sprucing up any spaces. We're not making this hard. We're showing up to a restaurant that's going to fix all the food and clean up and whatever. And we were all sitting around a table and did a gift exchange. And it was just full of love and appreciation. And a lot of those feelings were expressed from me to them, from them to me. They gave me a pink luggage set for Christmas, which is very exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I never feel like they should have to give me a present, but they, they're really, really kind and gave me a pink luggage set, which was really cute. But anyway, and my husband made a bobblehead for Jason, one of our team members, that was of himself that he carved.
So good.
It was a lot of just like inside jokes, love, and very, very low cost, and I think that describes our culture of what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Of just like, we were in the trenches for 12 months together. Wow, look at this.
Yeah.
We created 30 magazines this year and 6 events and many other things. And with a small team. So let's stop and like hug.
That's
Let's
right.
stop and be like, wow, look at us.
Yeah.
I love you. I love you too, And I am just so appreciative of that. That's one thing about being an entrepreneur that I didn't anticipate, was how much I loved creating a team and mentoring a team. That's not why I started a business.
Right.
I thought I'd really love making magazines, and I do. And but I didn't realize that part of it would be really rewarding.
Yeah.
And to mentor a lot of, especially the female employees who get married and have their first baby, and we talk through that, and I love being part of that journey.
That's incredible. And speaks volumes just about how you show up for them, right?
Thank you.
And I'm sure many of them, if I were to ask them this question, and I'm curious for you too, when you come up with a challenge, and maybe there's a handful of people, who do you turn to?
When we started the magazine, nobody. Like, I really didn't have, I know my parents love me, but they're not business people, and they're not in my industry. And I didn't know a lot of people. I've created that over time. So, I get on my knees. That's been really important. And a lot of times that feels like the only person who might understand me.
Right.
And then over time, I've developed a great network of mentors and friends. And what I've learned is nobody knows all the answers. We're all figuring it out.
Right.
But when I've gone through certain things, Karen Clark's been a big mentor and friend. I really, really love her. And you and Andrew Smith and Fraser Bullock and all the people that I've interviewed have been mentors to me, probably in ways they don't fully understand.
Right.
I
was just thinking about that. You, through your career, you've been the recipient as well as the readers, right? But to think that you get to sit kind of eye to eye with someone and have them in their home.
Isn't that cool?
Oftentimes. So amazing. But the life lessons that you've learned over time and what that's done to help you.
Oh, it's stunning. And that's why it comes back to, like, I feel like my kids need to know more of what I'm experiencing. Because a lot happens to me in a day. And sometimes when I get home, I'm just like, okay, tell me about you guys. Like the book reports, the this and that. And that's all good. But lately I've been like, but I actually want to tell you guys about what I learned from Derek or whatever, It really is an absolute honor and privilege. And when I drive up and down I-15 or around our community, and I can look at office buildings, I can look at homes, and I've sat in there. I know the feeling in there.
Right.
Like I know that person, and I know kind of the backstory, because most interviews, there's a part of it where, like, this part's off the record,
Right.
And sometimes those are the most tender things that I'm not going to share if they don't want me to, but it helps me understand the person better, to understand some of the off the record type things. So it's been an absolute privilege. We have some phenomenal people in this community.
It's incredible.
It's per capita. What? Like, it's really pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is the feeling that you've helped create and that you're doing with this podcast, which is, let's share. Let's have camaraderie. competition, yes, but like that's not the whole thing. It's more camaraderie, right? Like let's do this together.
Yeah.
And then I think that helps different people, Word Perfect, for example. So you have Alan Ashton, you have Bruce Bastian, but the Ashtons, look at what they've mentored and helped, and they've been multipliers of people. And so many people can trace their lineage, their career lineage to Word Perfect or New Skin or some of these big companies that are led by good people, that then just that flows. And I feel like we have a community where we value that.
That's so true.
Pretty amazing.
It is really unique.
It really
what
is.
we have here.
It's
and to
special.
see how it's grown over the years. Again, I remember driving from Provo to Salt Lake, and there were times when it was like the cities were pretty separated, right?
Starts
you
and
had farmland,
stops.
And now it's just constant.
I know.
And it's the same thing. I see company names and I see faces behind those companies.
Yeah, they're humans behind those logos.
And that's the thing, is oftentimes, and that's what we hope to just share, is when you feel like you're all alone or you're stuck or no one knows or understands, right? A text or a message or something, even as you shared that earlier, right? Someone who'd reached out, hey, I'm going to reach out to Jeanette. Number one, because I feel like I can, which is huge. Number two, she knows or may know what I'm about ready to experience.
At least a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit, right? We don't, but the opportunity to listen, and we're so connected, but it seems the connectedness often is just one-sided, right? Where we're just observing and seeing, and
we're consuming content, but not connecting all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that most people are pretty generous with their time, and that if you really wanted to learn from someone, be mentored by them, and ask them a few questions, if you reach out, they will try to fit in your calendar.
Yeah.
I'm really pretty amazed at the high level people in this community that will do that.
Right.
I've watched my son-in-law, he's really outgoing, and he's graduated in business, and along the way he'd reach out to people, and I'd be like, wow, you have lunch with them today?
Yeah.
Good on you. But good for them too,
Right.
but that's, our community's full of those types of people. Blake Roney, who has taken time numerous times to give me advice about parenting, about church callings, about business. And he does it with his own sense of humor. And I love it.
Yeah.
I'm the sum of all of these conversations and all of these generosities. It's pretty incredible. I'm a fan.
It's so incredible. What brings you the greatest joy?
I get a real sense of joy when I see that I've connected someone. So, for example, when we do our 40 under 40 for our business magazine, or our UV50 for our business magazine, and at the photo shoot, and then at the launch party, I see people who should know each other, but they hadn't met for whatever reason, and they met because we lit a spark. We had a gathering, That fills me with a lot of joy. And then when I later hear that they did a business deal together or something good happened, I feel like a proud grandma in the background. I'm so happy because you should know each other. You should collaborate. That's so good. That brings me a lot of joy. I also just get a lot of joy out of good conversation. And, the hard part for me is after a good conversation, then I have to write about it.
Yeah.
Then I have to take those 2 or 3 hours and go, wow, what do I start with? What do I not include? Because that was a lot of stuff and I can't include it all. But it brings me a lot of joy to really get to know someone. That's really fun for me. And to find, often we find connections on something, but, I try not to insert myself in the conversation, especially in the interview too much. It's not about me. But I love it when there is that connection. That brings me a lot of joy. Right now, my kids are bringing me a lot of joy. I'm going to be a grandma in a few months.
Congratulations.
So it's a girl, and she has more presents than anyone under the tree. She's not alive. She will not be here on Christmas. But just knowing she's coming is bringing our family a lot of joy. So different stages of life. I still have an 11-year-old, and then I have 2 kids that are married, done with college, and, in between. And so it gives me a lot of joy to be part of people's life journeys. And honestly, being alive is pretty joyful. It's pretty cool.
It is
You know,
cool.
Patty Edwards, who's Lavelle Edwards' wife. Lavelle has passed on, but Patty is still with us, still amazing. And I interviewed her. I did an issue once where I interviewed a woman in her 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and Patty was the 80s. And she said, it is such a privilege. It's a privilege to grow old. She's like, so many don't get this privilege. It is a privilege to be my age. And I love that because I do have people who are like, don't print my age. You know, and take out my wrinkles and take out all this stuff. I hear that all the time. I say those things too myself sometimes. But that she said that it's such a privilege to grow old. I have thought about that and reshared that with so many women, especially who sometimes think that age is the enemy. No, what a privilege, you know?
Yeah.
It's really, really cool to experience every decade. They're all different.
So true.
You know, and your dad had how many years? How old was he?
80. He died 10 days before his 83rd birthday.
Okay.
So 80.
So he got 8+ decades.
That's right. Amazing.
That's amazing.
Amazing life. No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And as you think about that, there's oftentimes in life, there's so many challenges and trials that it seems so dark and so tough that a lot of people, you want them to see what's on the other side. And I think that's the perspective of someone who's lived 6, 7, 8 decades, 9 decades to say, look, you got this. You can go. Keep pushing forward. But sometimes, what would you tell someone that's just totally stuck? And you're like, it's okay. Push through.
Well, first of all, I think sometimes validating people for their feelings. I've learned that that's more important. I think earlier me would just be like, come on, buck up. You got it. Let's move on, you know? But what I've learned is not everybody thinks like me. And a lot of people want to just be told, that is really hard. Like, let's sit in this for a second. This isn't fun. This isn't what you wanted. A plus B didn't equal C in this case, and that's frustrating. People often want that moment, and maybe it's a long moment, you know? But I've had to adjust to that instead of just going right to solution.
Right.
You know, let's think our way out of this. We're moving forward.
That's right.
That day comes, you know, and that conversation can come. But that's one thing I think that that's a step that I've added to my repertoire.
I like that. I like that so much because maybe it's the Idaho in you and it's the growing up on a farm in me that my dad, you fall off, you get back on and let's just go.
Yeah.
Versus like, all right, let's just take a second and figure this out and process and be, and where's the source of inspiration and where can you look? And again, I love that idea. And whenever someone reaches out, that's what I try to do too, is, and you said it well, try to be that person that you wish you had. Right.
Yeah.
So if you were to start the magazine all over today,
I know too much now.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I would do much different. My goals are still the same as they were when I was 25 and launching that first issue, which is to celebrate all that's good. A lot of journalism is negative and sensational and clickbaity. And I don't feel like I've ever adopted that philosophy. So I think my goals would still be the same. It's a lot more complicated now. When we started the magazine in 2000, no Facebook, no Instagram, no anything.
Right.
Texting. I didn't even send my first text till I think it was 2002 when Paul Allen asked me to text him.
Yeah.
And I was
Paul's
like,
so
and I
awesome.
said, okay, good. And then I'm like, I guess I'm going to figure out how to text someone. And it was like you had to hit three times for a C and then A for, you know,
right.
I don't know. I'm older than you, so maybe you don't remember. But it's just like texting was hard. So back then, it was actually such a blessing that we started in a fairly simple time. And it was the year before the .com. It was the year before 9/11 and the bubble burst and all of that. It was really kind of a Shangri-La time to start, right before everything came. And I didn't know what I didn't know. What a blessing.
Yeah.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have all the questions that I would have now. Because I'm kind of we'll figure it out along the way. You know? And so I know too much now. So it was really good. But if I would start again, I would know what was ahead of me, which is a really good ride full of people and stories and challenges that we're going to overcome. Also, I have the perspective now of like, nothing's that big of a deal. I've kind of adopted that as a parent too. Like, you know what? Nothing's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
My circle of big
awesome.
deals is about this.
Yeah. The circle of big deals grows. That is too good. I love that. Well, I want to ask you just a few kind of rapid fire questions, but I love, before we do that, your ability to shine a light on others is so inspiring. And having been a longtime reader, I remember the first magazine that came out.
Thank you.
And I'm like, this is so great to hear all of the amazing stories and things that are happening here in Utah. You've had an impact outside of Utah, which I think we could spend an entire podcast just talking about that.
That'd be fun.
So please come back.
Okay.
Your work in New York with what you're doing for women, right, is so incredibly inspiring. Maybe we talk about that for a minute. Is that okay?
Sure.
And what have you learned through that journey and experience outside of Utah, right? Because you think about all the light you brought here to the state, outside of as well.
Well, you might be overstating it a little bit, but that piece of my life. So I started going to the Commission on the Status of Women a number of years ago, and it was because someone I wrote about connected me to someone else who was putting together a group of women, and just all these connections that have blessed my life. And when a door opens, I like to walk through it. And so that's how that started, was just someone I wrote about who was going back there. And then I went back for a number of years. It went virtual during the pandemic. It hasn't been exactly the same since then. But the biggest thing that happened was I felt early on, like probably my second year, like I'm supposed to bring a group of young women back. And it took me a couple years to pull that off. But it's phenomenal because back there, one of the big goals of this Commission on the Status of Women is equality for women. Well, of course, that sounds like something we would all agree with, right? Like we want, we're all pro women. I hope we all are.
Right.
But sometimes what that meant to people back there was like, let's be less feminine. Let's all be the same. Let's be like men. Let's put aside the things that make us women, which includes childbearing, which includes marriage. And because those things will hold you back. Those were some of the prevailing thoughts and solutions that were presented. And I felt like one of the reasons I needed to be there was to be like, hey, I have 5 kids and I have a business and a career. I'm really happy. This doesn't have to be an either or thing.
Yeah.
It's not like kids will ruin your life and you won't be able to climb the ladder or get your equality. That's actually our superpower, is to lean into the femininity and lean into the things that make us women biologically and just our nature. There's something to that. Right. There's something to gender,
right.
which didn't used to be a crazy idea.
Yeah.
But it started to be that. And so I liked to just comment in different classes and be like, actually, as a mom, I have found this. I would kind of usually start a comment with things like that. So anyway, I brought back 8 girls. We had an application process and narrowed it down and chose these 8 girls and went back and did a session. This is sort of a long story. How long is this podcast?
This is great.
I actually have thought about writing like a screenplay of that trip because there's a lot of cool stuff to it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we ended up doing a session. The UN, there was this freak snowstorm at the UN the day of our session. And we thought, lemon, what the heck? The subway is shut down. How are we even going to get there? This is crazy. The UN canceled their events in the UN campus. Ours happened to be across the street, which we could still do. Wow. They hadn't closed the building. So we got there through a combination of, there was one subway line working, we walked, we get there. There was nowhere else for people to go but our session because of the snowstorm. Anyway, the girls did an amazing job. I think it was, we've kept in touch with those 8 girls. They're my girls, and we have a love that is life and longer with that group. Anyway, they got to go back and basically say, being a woman and being a young woman is pretty cool. And they had data and they had personal experiences. Each of their presentations, we worked on to where they were beautiful. And it was a really, really cool experience.
Awesome.
I don't feel like that chapter of mine is over, but it's currently, since it's gone virtual, it's been a little bit of a different animal. Yeah. But that is, I've made friends back there that I've stayed in touch with and connections that I would never have met, you know, if I wasn't sitting next to them in a session.
I love that.
Yeah.
And how can you inspire more women to start like you did, that spark? That's what it really takes. And then just acting on that. What advice would you give to women who want to start a business?
Yeah, I would say show up to a woman business event, show up to a networking event, just sit by people, ask them their stories. They'll ask you your story. You'll say, well, I'm thinking about this. And they'll say, oh, I know someone who does that, blah, blah, blah. Connect you here. Let me give you their number. Just to start opening your mouth.
Yeah.
Just start seeing it. Like I Bennett Communications is the name of our company. Like I started using that phrase a year before I actually made it official. I just started saying it. At first I'd smile like, oh, Bennett Communications International Headquarters. I mean, like right here, you know, and it'd be kind of funny, but like you declare it into existence. So I think women can use that, women and men, all of us can use that as a superpower. Just start saying it's true.
Right.
Putting up little sticky notes on your desk or whatever, saying it out loud, you know, affirmations of your dreams kind of a thing. I think it just starts with that, a little bit of belief, but I also think connection is an ingredient that cannot be overlooked. You cannot do it alone.
Right.
And you don't have to.
Right.
And why would you?
So great.
Yeah. Make connections.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You've shared so much wisdom. I want to know, I was going to ask you just a few rapid-fire questions.
Okay, let's do it.
What is your favorite book or books?
Ooh, favorites. Oh, like my mind is spinning right now. I read more magazines than I do. Like I just read The Atlantic and the Harvard Business Review on my last flight. I like really good writing. I like really good phrases. I'm a mix of business books and church books. That's what you see. Like my daughters read fiction, and I'm glad they do. Like,
right.
but that's not me.
We're the same.
Yeah.
The same.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's a very good answer, but that's where I'm at. I have health books on my nightstand right now too. Healthy aging and healthy, the rain barrel effect. I have a few I'm always kind of flipping through.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for your time today. It has been an absolute pleasure, and thanks for shining a light on so many and for the light that you are in our community.
Thanks,
so
Derek.
inspired by you.
I feel the same about you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Lemonade Stand podcast, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use to be alerted when we release new episodes. We'd also love to hear your feedback in the reviews, and if you or someone you know has an awesome Lemonade Stand story, please reach out to us on social media and let us know. Thanks so much, and have a great day.